In this video, I'll show you how to make this Jack-o'-lantern pattern brush, which makes a wonderful border for newsletters or for invitations for the fall time of the year. I'll be using two of the clip art designs that we created in the fall design series. And if you haven't had a chance to watch those yet, you may want to check out how to create a pumpkin and how to make a floral art brush. I'll come over to the document that has those items. I'll select the floral art design, which we made into an art brush, and the jack-o'-lantern, and I'm going to copy them using the keyboard shortcut Command C. Then I'll come over to a document I've already opened, and I'll paste them there using the keyboard shortcut Command V. Now these are a little large for this project, so I'll resize them by going up to Object, Transform, Scale, and I'm going to use a uniform scale of 50%, and I have scale strokes and effects checked, and I'll press the OK button. And I'm going to move these up and out of the way and just click on the artboard to deselect them. The first order of business is to get the layers panel organized. So I'm going to come over to the layers panel and open it. I'll close the jack-o'-lantern group. I'll come down to the bottom of the layers panel and click on create new layer, and I'll name this jack-o'-lantern, and then I'll click on the layer that has the jack-o'-lantern and just hold my mouse down as I drag it into this layer, and then I'll double click on layer 1 to rename this floral art, and I'll close this layer, and then I'll come down and open up one more layer. And this one is going to be side tile. The side tile is the repeating part of the pattern brush, and we're going to create that first. So I'll come over and select the jack-o'-lantern. I'll hold the Option key down and just drag a copy over into the center of the artboard. Now because the jack-o'-lantern was in the jack-o'-lantern layer, the copy was also placed in the layers. I need to twirl down here, and the one that is selected is shown with the little red dot here, and we see it selected on the board. Your colors may be different, but just be looking for this little square on the right side of the layer. So I'm going to select this group, and I'm going to just drag it and drop it on the side tile layer. Then I'll close the jack-o'-lantern layer, I'll lock it, and I'll lock the floral art. Now nothing else can end up in these layers that we don't want. And I'll click on the artboard to deselect this. I will put a background around this jack-o'-lantern using the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M. I'll click on the artboard to open up the rectangle dialog box and type in 2.5 inches for the width. I'll press the tab key and then type in 2.5 inches for the height and press my return key, and that gives me a 2.5 inch square. I'll come to the properties panel, and I'm going to give this a black fill, and I'm going to remove the stroke. Now I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and select both the jack-o'-lantern and my square. Come over to the properties panel, and in the align area, I'm going to click on the horizontal align center and the vertical align center. And now my jack-o'-lantern is centered inside my square. And our square is in front of the jack-o'-lantern because it was the last object that was drawn. And we can easily fix that by coming to the layers panel, and I'll just select rectangle and I'll drag it underneath the jack-o'-lantern. I could have also used the keyboard shortcut Shift Command left bracket. Now I want to move my jack-o'-lantern just slightly, so I'm going to select it and I'm going to arrow down 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'll select both the jack-o'-lantern and the square, and I'll group them using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Now I'll create the bounding box, which is the invisible rectangle that goes behind the side tile design, and it tells Illustrator how to place the side tile in the pattern brush so that it's seamless. We'll get the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M, and I'll click on the artboard. I already have the measurements in place, 2.5 by 2.5. Now, if I was creating something and I did not know the exact measurements of the background, I would very carefully draw a bounding box around that background. But because we know it's a square and it's 2.5 inches, I'm just going to press the return key, and I have a square that I can use for the bounding box, except for it has to be invisible. So I'll come over to the Properties panel and I will remove the fill and remove the stroke. Now I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V. I'll select both the bounding box and my design and move over to the Properties panel and click on the horizontal align center and the vertical align center. Now I'll open the Layers panel and we see that our bounding box is above our design. I'm going to double click on Rectangle and rename this BB1 for Bounding Box 1. And it has to be behind the design in order for Illustrator to recognize it as a bounding box. So I'll click on it and drag it down. I could have used the keyboard shortcut Shift Command left bracket. Now I'll select all of these items together and I'll group them using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Now we have our side tile ready, but I'm going to move it out of the way so that we can make our outer corner tile. I'll just click on the artboard to deselect this. In many circumstances, the outer tile takes a number of steps in order to create, and if you want to learn all about that, you can check out my video, Creating Outer Corner Tiles for Pattern Brushes. Because we're using a square for our side tile, we're also able to create an outer corner tile that's a square, that's the same dimension, and it's going to fit perfectly. So I'll get the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M, and click on the artboard. The measurements are already in the rectangle dialog box, and so I'll press the return key, and this gives me another 2.5 inch square. I'll come to the Properties panel, and I'll give it a fill color of the CMYK color 08095 And now I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and click on the artboard to deselect this. Now before I can finish my outer corner tile, I'm going to have to make an art brush with our floral design. I'll come to the Layers panel. I'll unlock the floral art layer, but I'm going to need the Brushes panel before I can go any further. So I'll go up to Window, click on Brushes, and then I'll press on the Brushes tab and drag and drop it next to the Libraries tab, then close out the swatches and symbols. And I'm going to get our floral art design, and I'm going to just drag and drop it into the Brushes panel. That brings up the New Brush dialog box, and I'm going to select Art Brush and say OK. And this brings up the Art Brush Options dialog box. I'll just type in Floral. Then we'll check Scale Proportionately and click the OK button. And I'm going to come back over to the Layers panel and lock that layer again. And then I'll come back and select Side Tile. I'll move into the outline viewing mode, keyboard shortcut Command Y, and I do that because I want to remove the color and be able to see the little center mark on my square. I'll get the pen tool, keyboard shortcut P, and I'll click on the bottom right anchor, and then I'm going to just drag a line up through that center point and not quite to the corner, but almost, and press down for my ending anchor here. Then I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'm going to lock this path because I'm going to add more paths from this anchor, and if I don't have it locked, it'll mess this one up. So now let's get the pen tool again, keyboard shortcut P, click on that bottom anchor, come and drag up another line, and I'm wanting it to come to the same height as the left one, and you can see I have my little pink line showing there, and I have that because I have Smart Guides turned on. I need to get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I want to rotate this line and copy it over to this side right here. So I'll select it and then get the rotate tool, keyboard shortcut R, and I'll click on this anchor to move the rotate ball down here. and then I'll hold down my Option key so that it copies this line, and I'm going to just drag it, trying to get it about the same angle as the one on the top, and release my mouse and get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V. Now we'll move back into the preview mode, keyboard shortcut Command Y. I need to unlock that first line, and then I'll hold down my Shift key and select these other two lines and open the brushes panel, and I'll click on the floral art brush, and we have our design. Now I want to group those, so while they're selected I'll use the keyboard shortcut Command G, and then I'm going to click on the artboard to deselect them. I'll use the zoom tool, keyboard shortcut Z, and just move in a little bit and inspect this. Now I don't want my stems to overlap the square, so I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'll select these items, and I'm going to just drag them up just a little bit, and that removes them from the outside of the corner, and I'll click on the artboard to deselect them. I'll recenter my artboard using the keyboard shortcut Command 0, and then I'm going to select the background and the designs, and I'll group them using the keyboard shortcut Command G. All right, let's come over to the layers panel, and we actually need to create another layer. So I'm going to click on the create new layer, and I'm going to name this one outer corner, and I'm going to click on this group right here that is selected and drag it up into outer corner. Now I'll close the side tile, and I'm going to lock it, and I'll twirl down on our outer corner tile, and now we need a bounding box for the outer corner tile. And again, the bounding box normally takes a little bit more work, but we know the dimensions, and we can just create another 2.5 inch invisible square. So I'll get the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M, click on the artboard to open up the rectangle dialog box, and because the dimensions are there, I just press the return key. This gives me my 2.5 inch box, which I'll come over to the properties panel and remove the fill color, and then remove the stroke, and then I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, select the bounding box and the design, come over to the properties panel in the align area, click on the horizontal align center and the vertical align center. Now let's open up the layers panel, and we're going to rename this BB2 for bounding box 2, and it needs to be behind the design, so we'll just drag it there. And I'll remove the lock on the side tile because we're ready to make our pattern brush. I'll open the brushes panel, and the first step is to drag in the side tile. So I'll select our side tile, and I'm going to just drag and drop it into the brushes panel. I'll select pattern brush and say OK, and I'll name this Jackolantern Pattern Brush, and I'm going to say OK. Now I'll get our outer corner tile, and to place the outer corner tile in this pattern brush, I have to hold the Option key down, and I'm going to drag it and drop it in the very first bin and release my mouse. And you can see that it is placed in the first bin in our pattern brush options dialog box, which is the outer corner tile. And in the preview, you can see that it has been placed perfectly. And now I'll just press OK, and I'll move this out of the way, and then I'm actually going to select all of these items, come over to the layers panel, and I'm going to hide them all, and I'll open up a new layer, and this is where we're going to see what we've ended up with. I'll get the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M, and click on the artboard, and I want the width of my rectangle to be 13 inches. I'll press the tab key and type in 8 inches for the height and press the return key. I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'm going to center this on our artboard. Now I'll open up the brushes panel, and I'm going to click on the Jack-o'-lantern pattern brush. And we have a seamless pattern brush. It is too big for this document, so I'll come to the properties panel, and I'm going to just reduce the stroke size to 1/2 inch, and I'll deselect it so that we can inspect this, and I think it's looking pretty good. Now, in the example I showed you, there was a green border around the inside and outside of the pattern brush, and I'll show you how to do that. I'll click on the stroke, and I'm going to copy it. I'll use the keyboard shortcut Command C, and then I want to paste a copy right on top of the one that I have. And so I'll use the keyboard shortcut Shift Command V. And you can't see it because they're both exactly the same, but we can come to the Layers panel, and in Layer 5, I'm going to rename this Frame. I can twirl down, and you see that there are 2 rectangles. The top one is selected, and I'm going to need the pattern brush on the top, so I'm going to edit the bottom rectangle. I'll click on the ball to the right of the layer, and that selects the bottom layer. And then I need to go to the Brushes panel, and I need to remove the pattern brush and just change this to a basic line. So I'll click on that and come back to the Layers panel, and you can see that change has been made. Now we'll come to the Properties panel with that bottom stroke selected, and I'm going to click on the stroke icon, and I'm going to give it the CMYK color 50-0100. And then I'll change the weight of the stroke to 110 points and press the return key. I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I will deselect it. And you can see that we have a seamless jack-o'-lantern pattern brush with an additional border around the side. You don't have to add the border, but I think it just gives it a finishing touch. You could also incorporate that in your pattern brush, but there are a lot more steps, and this way it's just simple. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and you've learned some new things about Illustrator. In the next video, I'll be showing you how to create some handmade letters and apply this pattern brush to them. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, do me a favor and do that right now. It helps you not miss any episodes, and it helps me as well. Thank you for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.